immigration lawyer, and my political partner, Shirl Mora James. Welcome to the show, Shirl. How are you doing? Can you hear me just fine?
Yeah, I hear you fine. Well, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be able to come and visit with you and answer any questions I'm able to answer.
Right, and just to my audience, want to let you know that last week we had Stevie Salas, a rocker. This week we're getting political. This is about community. This is activism, 100% activism. And if you have any questions, go ahead and make a comment on the live video, and the director-producer will be sure to get that question to us if you have any questions about immigration. Now, the reason why we have Cesar here, who is a DREAM Act activist, and the reason why we have Shirl on the line is because there has been so much information out there with regard to Donald Trump, the DREAM Act situation, and right now we're hearing that there are some dreamers that are willing to exchange American taxpayers funding the border wall in exchange for the DREAM Act. Okay? But I am proud to say that Cesar is not one of them. And he's going to explain why before Shirl comes on the line. Cesar, why don't you explain to us why you're one of the dreamers who is not for the border wall in exchange for the DREAM Act?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to first just take the time to thank you for inviting me, of course. Well, I think to me it's just, I mean, I've been involved for quite a year, for quite some time, quite some years in activism here, organizing the community, and it just doesn't really make sense to me for us to support the wall. I mean, I remember during Obama's terms, we were on him so much about enforcement, and that he was enforcing, and that he was deporting a lot of people out, deporting so many people back to Mexico, and we were so against him enforcement, and that was like such a key term. Why is he so big on enforcement? Why is he deporting so many families, right? And for us to, I mean, I can't think of a bigger thing that yells enforcement than a 20-foot wall on the border, right? I think that's the to the extreme, right? So I think we just seem hypocritical for us to be saying that we're willing to exchange, we're willing to negotiate citizenship for a 20-foot wall, however big it is, when we were just so emphatic about enforcement during Obama's terms, right? It doesn't make sense to me. I think it seems hypocritical. I think it seems irresponsible on our behalf, and all those people who are promoting on social media, who are going on the news to say we're willing to trade, we're willing to negotiate citizenship for the wall, when we know that the wall is not the solution. It's going to only cause more debt, more burden on the taxpayer, more burden on us. If we're on a pathway to citizenship, we're eventually going to have to pay higher taxes in order to pay for the wall. So it doesn't make any sense to me. It's just, we know, I mean, are we just kind of like giving up on driving the point to people that the wall's not going to stop illegal crossings at the border, or are we just giving into ignorance, or is it just or are we kind of negotiating on our own morals and our own values? It just doesn't make sense to me, really.
Shirl, can you hear me, Shirl? Shirl? Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. There's a little bit of a delay. Did you hear Cesar, what he said with regard to not wanting to break precedents in Dreamer, past protests with regard to enforcement?
Yeah, I did, and I agree with him. But my basis for not endorsing or willing to trade the wall for Dreamer's path to citizenship is government right now is pitting dreamers against their own families by saying, yeah, let's build this wall, and willing to also give up family reunification, because if you look at what Trump is asking for now, he is, number one, asking for the wall. Well, if we remember correctly, during his campaign, Mexico was supposed to pay for the wall. So what happened? I thought Mexico was going to pay for the wall. They were going to, they had different methods how they were going to make Mexico pay for the wall. And now all of a sudden, U.S. taxpayers are going to end up paying for the wall? No, I don't think so. So economically, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad for business, especially for individuals that have land on the border. You also have areas on the border that are either mountainous or they flood all the time. So they don't have a wall because physically you can't put a wall up there. In addition to that, you also have an area that it doesn't belong to U.S. It doesn't belong to the U.S. It belongs to Native people. Well, they can't just go on. I mean, either Native people have their own sovereignty or they don't. So that the reality, the physical wall is not necessary because of technology. If they want to build a data wall, I don't have a problem with that, because the United States government has the capability now to easily track whoever they want to track, and they can find whoever they want to find. I mean, right now, ICE has the capability of tracking people via their vehicles almost live time, almost real time. They can now find you no matter where you're at on the mainland. They'd be able to find you. And that's what the government is not telling you. So,
now,
I mean,
can we talk about a little bit with regard, and feel free to jump in anytime, Cesar, if you have any questions for Shirl. But Shirl, there's like a tremendous hypocrisy, because President Eisenhower, when he was president, used his executive order privileges with regard to immigration. And, you know, it's just interesting how when Obama exercised his executive order privileges, Trump is all about repealing anything and everything to do with President Obama, even though Trump himself tried to take advantage of the executive order privileges he has with regard to the Muslim ban. And I think it was you on the phone earlier before the show, you said that if dreamers were blue-eyed and blonde, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and why you believe that?
Well, the reason why I believe that is because Trump's own statement last week, when he was making references to non-white countries as shitholes or shithouses, whatever word he said, and then turned around and said, why can't we get more Norwegians here? Well, that's clear to me that his references was towards brown people and black people, Haitians, Africans, and Central Americans. That's who he was talking about. And then he turns around in the next breath and says, too bad we can't bring more Norwegians here. So you're talking about black and brown people with the negative connotation, but blonde and blue-eyed people in a positive light. And so that's what my belief is. If you look at what he did during his campaigning and who he catered to, was white supremacists. Even after the white supremacists ran over the woman in their parade, he turned around. This guy had killed her by running her over in his car. And Trump says, well, both sides, they're good people. Really?
I think also that's the source of that's what we need to address. I think that's the issue that we need to address, because I think at this point we need to open those venues of communication to reach out to the Trump crowd and be able to say exactly what the issue is, what's the issue that they have, right? Because if it's people coming across the border, you mentioned earlier, the solution is not a wall. The solution is being able to keep better track of who's coming in, who has worker visas, who has guest visas, how long are they staying, where are they working, who's employing them. So the number one issue at the border is tracking, being able to know who's coming in, when are they coming out, when are they renewing their visas, and so on and so forth, because that's where the majority of illegal immigration comes from. It's people who overstay their visas, not people crossing just the border. And if it's a negotiation, I see it as a poker game, right? And what are we willing to negotiate? What exactly is their issue that they have? Are they afraid? Is the Trump crowd afraid of specifically Mexican people, specifically colored people, or are they afraid that? What is it, a fear, or is it? And here's the thing: Trump now is backtracking. Now he's talking a lot about a merit system, right? A merit system. I want to change the immigration system to a merit system, right? And meet certain qualifications, whether it's military, education, the salary that you make, how much taxes you're paying into to the United States. So if it's the merit system, I just like to take the time and say, where is his merit system? What merit system is he qualifying for, where he says these outrageous things, right? Like you were talking about, referring to people that they come from shithole countries, right? And if it's a merit system, I'm perfectly fine with it. Me as a dreamer, I can speak on that. I mean, I'm willing to meet any type of qualifications, whether it's education, whether it's military, whether it's a certain salary that I have to earn, a certain amount of businesses that I have to start or run, or taxes that I have to pay. That's perfectly fine. But I don't think that's the issue, because I don't think he's speaking about a merit system, because he's referring to people from Africa, from people from is it El Salvador, right? That they're bad people, or they're from Honduras, and people from Norwegians, right? That they're the ones who are supposed to come. So I don't think his merit, the merit system is the key there. I think it's a deeper issue. And we welcome people to open those venues of communication with us. I can say I'm not afraid of the Trump crowd. At these extremes, we need to do something. Something needs to be done. I think a piece of legislation does not need to be perfect in order to be written into law. It could be modified later. It could be adjusted later. But the point here is we need to make progress, because people are in need of relief today. They needed relief tomorrow. I mean, yesterday, right? So they need relief. And a bill of legislation does not need to be perfect to be written into law.
What was that, Shirl?
Well, this is how I see it. What this whole wall argument is basically, they're holding dreamers / DACA recipients hostage. You either give us the wall, or we won't give you relief for dreamers. That is unconscionable. These are the brightest and the best vetted immigrant group in this country as we speak. The most educated group, the most vetted group. Because if you have DACA, you cannot have even committed a significant misdemeanor, i.e., if you're drunk driving, you no longer have DACA. That's pretty strict. They have a clean criminal background, because if they don't, they would not qualify for DACA. And that's something that is never discussed and never brought up. That these kids are better educated and have clean criminal histories.
Now, Shirl, there has been so many ups and downs back and forth with regard to the DREAM Act, and I witnessed with my own eyes when you and I talked on the phone before the show. I witnessed with my own eyes Cesar's face, he was in shock and disbelief that the advance parole is gone. What else do these dreamers need to know? I know that, with renewals, they can renew. Can you kind of give us the lowdown for the dreamers? Because this show is being recorded, and it's going to be shared in various immigration groups. But can you give us a lowdown with regard to advance parole and so forth?
Okay, for dreamers now, back in September, Trump decided that he was going to get rid of DACA. Now, we can argue about what his basis was, what his reasoning was. I believe that his reasoning was so that he could use them as a bargaining chip for the wall. That's my perception of how it went down. Anyway, so if you after October the 5th, you are not allowed, they would not accept any more renewals for DACA or applications for DACA. And advance parole also was off the table. In a recent decision out of California, the federal court said what Trump had done by discontinuing DACA was not on a good basis. There was not good reasoning behind it. In other words, he acted in bad faith, okay? So that means that now, if you need to renew, you can renew. And folks that could have renewed after October the 5th until now, they're eligible to renew, even though it's past the expiration date that they had artificially put up last year. However, the only thing that lawsuit saved was the renewal piece of DACA. New applications you're not eligible to make new application, and advance parole has not been reinstated either. So I highly recommend anyone that needs to renew their DACA, go ahead and get it renewed.
Now,
folks that are thinking about advance parole, that's not on the table. Not on the table
And see,
at all.
that's why I think this president is just so he's so bad for this country, because I mean, in my personal situation, my grandfather has Alzheimer's. He's over 80 years old, and I was hoping to have advanced parole to be able to see him. It's been over 25 years since I've been able to see him. So this president is making decisions that affect people's lives. And to backtrack on what you were saying a little bit, Shirl, I think that his whole fixation about the wall is simply to fulfill that campaign promise that he said where he had his whole crowd chanting,
Absolutely.
build that wall, right? And that's why I say we need to get down to the core issue of what is the problem with the Trump crowd towards us. Just to run a little bit of history of how it started, right? Because I've lived the entire history of how it started. Back in the early 90s, early 2000s, undocumented immigrants qualified for public benefits. They could get food stamps, WIC, and all sorts of things like that. And then it was the whole issue. Well, why do we want undocumented immigrants here taking advantage of public benefits?
Cesar, in certain states.
Right.
In other states, they were not eligible for that. And clearly now, no one who's undocumented is eligible for any kind of benefits. None. Even though they, you have a certain core supporters of Trump that try to promote the lie that people that are undocumented are on welfare. No, you can't. It's against state and federal law.
And that's
eligible.
Nationwide, right? And then it was right, and then it moved forward to education, and that the Dreamers had to pay out-of-state tuition, so they wanted us to keep us uneducated. Then when DACA passed, it was here locally. Governor Brewer didn't want to give us the licenses, right? And then we know the whole history, E-Verify, SB 1070 that came through. So like I said, there's an issue that the Trump crowd has towards us. Sometimes I think it's particularly against Mexicans. Sometimes I think it's immigrants in general. When you were just talking about the Muslim ban, so sometimes I think it's against immigrants in general. But if it's an issue, whether it's a merit system, whether it's meeting certain qualifications, I mean, we just mentioned public benefits and welfare. We don't need that crap, right? We're not here asking for that, right? But if it's a separate issue where they just don't like the color of our skin, then we can open however many venues of communication. We can talk until we turn blue in the face, but that's not going to be resolved. That's something that they have, right? So, but if it's not, right, if there's members of the Trump crowd who genuinely have concerns over whatever it be, the economy, just being, like you mentioned, a vetting system of knowing exactly who we're allowing into our borders, then that can be solved, that can be worked on. But the way I've seen it in the history, where they just deny us education, they deny us opportunities, it doesn't seem to me like it's any of those issues. It's just a personal problem that they have towards us, and I don't know if it can be resolved, honestly.
Now, Shirl, you said that the Nebraska Dreamers over there, they're against the wall, right?
Yes, they are. Yeah, all the Dreamers, and I'm pretty active here with all the groups, all the Dreamer groups here in Nebraska, and I have yet to speak to any Dreamer here in Nebraska that would be supportive of the wall.
Cesar,
absolutely not.
What's the vibe here in Arizona with the Dreamers? Is it half and half? What do you feel?
Well, I read an article that said it's split in half. Well, not just locally, but in general with the Dreamers. And that, again, is just, it baffles me.
Okay. Shirl, we're going to go on a quick break for about 30 seconds. Stay on the line, please, and we'll continue the DREAM Act immigration discussion.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Hola, estamos ayudando a muchas personas. Somos Onda Documents, una oficina multiservicios. Nuestros principales servicios son taxes, notario móvil, administración y registro de tu negocio. Además, oficiamos tu boda civil. Siempre lo más importante son nuestros clientes. Deja tus preocupaciones en nuestras manos, nosotros te ayudamos.
All right, we're back. I am DeeDee Garcia Blase, your host. With me is Cesar Valdez Flores, and on the telephone is immigration lawyer and civil rights attorney, Shirl Mora James. Shirl, real quick, I know Cesar has some questions for you, but what are some of the questions that you're getting from DREAM Act recipients and immigration? What Dreamer immigration questions are you getting? What are you being bombarded with?
I didn't quite hear that, DeeDee.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. What kinds of questions are you getting bombarded with at your office when it comes to the DREAM Act and immigration in general? What are those constant questions that you're getting? Is there a theme? Is there a heartbeat?
And also,
Yeah.
Cheryl, also if you could answer as well, because we've been doing a lot of criticism, right, towards the Dreamers who support trading the wall for citizenship, and I don't think that we should ever make a criticism without giving solutions, right? So I think a follow-up question that I would want to ask you is, I see this as a poker game, right? We're negotiating with the GOP, we're negotiating with Trump, right? So if we're not going to negotiate with the wall, right, to fulfill its campaign promise, what is a good bargaining chip? What is a good middle ground? What's a good common ground that we could move forward, right, and not criticize so many people who are supporting building the wall, but give alternatives. What agreement can we reach?
The bottom line is the wall is really a false narrative, because only when we start talking about comprehensive immigration reform for all the 11 million that are undocumented that are here, and I'm talking about people that have been here for 20, 30, certainly over 10 years, that have U.S. citizen children, that own homes, that have created businesses, that have added value to their community. They need to have a pathway. We need to bring them out of the shadows. And I think that the wall pits Dreamers against their very parents, and that's unconscionable. The reality is 80% of the American citizens today support a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers without any wall. That's the truth. However, you have Trump playing to his constituents, okay? This 30%. I'm sorry, but 30% is not a majority. When you have 70%, including Republicans, and even I've spoke to some of Trump supporters that support the Dreamers, which is really ironic. I mean, just how they wrap their head around that. I mean, you know, God bless them. But they believe that, you know, it's only right because the Dreamers are Americans. And, you know, they pledge allegiance to the flag like the rest of us. They were educated in our schools. They are Americans. And I've known Dreamers since, well, for at least 15, 16 years now.
Where do you see...
We went to school with... Go ahead.
Yeah, where do you see this Dreamer discussion going, Shirl? Give us the raw, brutal, honest truth. Where do you see it going?
I think people are going to be surprised, but I believe that Trump... it did not surprise me when Trump came out supporting a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers. I think Trump is going to do a Reagan. He just doesn't have the finesse that Reagan had. But Reagan, you know, he was pro-business, real pro-business.
But don't you think that the Reagan move, quote unquote, Reagan never advocated for a wall, but do you think that this DREAM Act policy is going to go through for the border wall? Do you see the border wall happening?
I don't think that it's going to. I think that there's going to be some kind of border wall, whether it's digital. It probably is going to be digital. And what I mean by digital, I mean electronics.
Drones.
You don't need, I mean, Mexico and the United States, they already have a hellacious wall between them. Where the wall could have been built, it was built. What my concern is, what about the northern wall? Why don't we have a wall up north? There are more drugs and human trafficking coming across the Canadian border. And if you look at the statistics, immigration from Mexico has almost stopped. And
So-
you don't hear that, though.
How long do you think this is going to take place with the dreamers? How long do you think it's going to be before they're
I think we're going to get a legislation that is going to protect the dreamers, and it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't happen March, April. It's going to happen because it's the right thing to do.
You don't think
It is the right thing to do.
Okay, so let me wrap my head around this. You think that there is going to be a DREAM Act policy essentially by March, April in exchange for something like a digital wall?
No, not for a physical wall. No, I think that the wall is a misnomer, and I think what is probably going to end up getting traded is the family reunification. That's what my fear is that what he's asking for, the 4 pillars that Trump just let out, was, border security, DACA legalization, protect the nuclear family, and really that protect the nuclear family means the family reunification that is the basis of our immigration system as we speak is going to be thrown out. And now, instead of being able to bring grandma, grandpa, mom and dad, and maybe a brother or two, you're only going to be able to bring minor children and your spouse. That's it. Well, that's not family to me. And it's not family for a lot of folks. But family reunification, they're trying to disguise it by calling it chain migration. And think about the hypocrisy. I mean, Trump himself, his mother and his German grandfather would have never been able to come to the United States on a merit-based system. They wouldn't have been allowed in. Let's be honest about this. In addition to that, if you look at the chain migration, which is really family reunification, but they changed the name because they're trying to fool people, his own wife got her papers because of family reunification. And her parents got the ability to come here under family reunification, also known as chain migration.
I've only got
So-
3, Shirl. I've got border security, DACA legalization. The third one was protect nuclear family, which includes minor children and spouse. Where's the fourth
And
one?
then the last one is eliminate lottery and repurpose visas. So basically the lottery visa program, I don't care if it goes. I really don't.
How come?
Me neither.
How come? Why don't you care? I'm curious.
Because I believe that, our immigration system should be family reunification. And I believe that lottery, if I'm lucky, I get to come here if I'm from a certain country. Yeah, I just,
Let me ask
that's not a
Cesar.
biggie.
Let me ask Cesar a question on the 4 pillars of the Trump administration with regard to immigration. She mentioned his 4 pillars are border security, DACA legalization, and protecting the nuclear family, which only includes the minor children and the spouse. In your opinion, are you okay with just limiting the minor children and the spouse and doing away with grandpa and grandma? What are your feelings on that?
No, I'm not. I don't
Why?
think so. Because I think we always say that our parents are the original dreamers. We've always chanted that for such a long time. So just like how there's DACA for us, there needs to be a form of DACA for our parents. The lottery, I don't care for it. It never really made sense to me. It always made more sense to me. You meet certain qualifications, you study, you go to college, you go to school, you act right. You don't have a criminal record. You should be allowed to, migrate here into the United States. So it never really made any much sense to me, to be honest with you. Where I see it going, as far as what Cheryl was touching on, was whether you like it or not, Donald Trump is business oriented, right? I think that when it comes down, I already see it happening. When it comes to him talking about the pathway to citizenship, I think that the fees, the legal fees that we're going to have to pay, the pardons for having crossed the border illegally are going to be higher. I have no problem with that. That's fine. I think this country is so valuable to me and offers so much opportunity as far as the entrepreneurship and business that if I had to pay $5,000 for a pardon for having to cross legally, even though my parents brought me here when I was 3 years old, I have no problem with that. But I think that's where it's going. Yeah.
Cesar?
Go ahead.
I want to make a point, and a lot of people, they miss this point. But how old were you when you got DACA?
I was 20 years old.
Okay. So I have a lot of clients that were 16, 17 when they got DACA. So as technically, as a child being brought over here, you do not accumulate illegal presence until after you turn 18. So a lot of the DACA kids have no reason for a waiver or a penalty.
That's an excellent
that
point.
You're talking about, because they have not, because when they turn 18 they had DACA, so they had legal presence. So instead of fining dreamers, the DACA recipients, I think that they should be given a no-cost waiver so that they don't, and have it so that they don't have to go back to their home country to get the damn visa stamp on their passport, that it can be done here in the States by just signing a waiver. Trump can do that. The Secretary of Homeland Security and Trump, they have the power to do that. They don't have to. They don't have to go to Congress to get that. That can be promoted through a regulation, a codification. I don't think that you should have to pay $5,000 or any money. You were a kid when you were brought here, were you not?
That's right.
So
At
why
least
should
he's
he be
willing.
punished?
You know, that should show Republicans that are watching this recording, that should show Republicans what dreamers are willing to do. They're willing to
Absolutely.
pay more. And as a former Republican, I have a message for the hypocritical Christian evangelical types who identify themselves as Republican. You know, if you see this hard anti-immigrant, hard right, who are just, they don't want any immigrants at all. And back when I was a Republican, I'm an independent voter now, but back when I was a Republican voter, I remember the Republican Party prided themselves
On family values.
on family values, exactly. And everything is just inverted, ass backwards on that now, and they can never pride themselves to that regard any longer.
Well, here's 2 points. There's supposed to be family values, pro-family. Then why in the world are you tearing apart mixed status families and taking fathers and mothers and deporting them away from their U.S. citizen children? It's unconscionable. To me, it's a violence. A violence, it's child abuse against these U.S. citizen children. There is a thing that there is a theory in the psychology arena now. It's called U.S. Children Syndrome, trauma. And that is the trauma that U.S. citizen children go through when they are forcibly separated from their parents because one of their parents was deported. It is like the intergenerational trauma of Native Americans, the intergenerational trauma of African Americans where they had family members that were slaves at one time. We are now, unfortunately, a lot of these folks are Mexican. And the tearing of the family scares me. They're destroying the family by deporting father or deporting mother.
Okay, well, we have about 5 more minutes. I want to just sort of wrap this up, and thank you again, Shirl, for coming on the air and really highlighting the 4 pillars of the Donald Trump administration and where they're wanting to go. The 4 pillars are border security, DACA legalization, protecting the nuclear family to include only the minor children and the spouse, and they want to eliminate the lottery and repurpose the visas. Cesar has gone on the record as a dreamer that he's not willing to trade the DREAM Act policy for the border wall. And so I'm going to let Cesar give us his final thoughts and where other dreamers can locate him on social media, and then we're going to end with Shirl. Cesar?
Yes. Final thoughts? Well, I think I definitely do want to backtrack a little bit just on the whole issue on what we were talking about. I come from a state of Mexico where it's overrun by violence. You can't own a business there because you just can't. There's too many criminals who show up and demand money from you, or else they burn your business down. So that's why this country is so valuable to me. To even if we do have to pay higher fees, as we were talking about, I'm willing. That's something I'm completely okay with. I want to touch a little bit more about what we were talking about as far as family values. I think that the GOP, again, and it's not, I don't mean to criticize, but I have to say it, right? I think family values left the door a long time ago when Donald Trump said that we're bringing crime, drugs, and that we're rapists, right? Or the GOP can never speak on family values ever, because I mean, it's on record, you know, his sexual misconduct, the secret mic where he was saying all those things.
About women.
About women.
He's a sexual predator.
Absolutely. The comments about shithole countries, and now recently where it's verified that he had an affair with a porn star,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's family values left all the conversation a long time ago.
Look at the way he treats his wife.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to touch on that. But again, we extend that invitation to the Trump crowd. The issue is not family values. We extend that invitation to open up those venues of communication. We're willing to negotiate. We're willing to compromise. We're willing to make a common ground. We're willing to talk to you, right, and get to know you. And feel free to contact us. As far as the Dreamers, I mean, I'm on. You can find me on all social media. Cesar, Valdez, Flores. I have a really long name, last name. So anywhere you type in Cesar Valdez, Flores, I'll pop up. So I think that's pretty much it.
All right, Shirl, do you have any closing comments? Do you have any final thoughts as we wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to make a challenge to all people that call themselves pro-life. If you're pro-life, then you need to be out in the streets fighting for Dreamers. Think about that. That's all I have to say.
And where can they contact you or your law office?
Yeah, you can contact me at 402-890-2295. Or I'm on Facebook, Mora James Law, Skype, S.A. Mora James. And I'm also on Twitter, Mora James Law, and S. Mora James.
Very good. All right. Well, that concludes this Tequila Onda show. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me. You can find me on Twitter at Real DeeDee Blase or on Facebook, DeeDee Garcia Blase. Thank you for listening and tuning in.
Thank you, DeeDee.
You're welcome. I'll call you on the way home, Shirl.
Okay. All righty then.